Back on the alien world, another familiar-looking robed figure finds the remains of the aliens in the empty box. The Psychos at first have no desire to work for Turkina, their obsession sticking with them. However, Turkina keeps them in line with devices attached to their arms. The Psychos get to work, kidnapping 4 of the 5 Rangers while in their civilian modes easily. Pink and Blue do face their counterparts with an actual fight, but it really highlights the strength difference, Kai just getting tossed around and Kedric's beaten up. Though this does make me wonder why Terra Venture is carrying around empty crates. Leo faces off against Psycho Red and does manage to morph, but Psycho Red is too much for him, even forcing him to demorph during the fight. However, the figure in the cloak arrives and rescues Leo, shooting Psycho Red with an equally familiar blaster. After they get away, the cloaked figure takes off his hood, revealing Legolas!
You're welcome. You're Andros, the Red Ranger. I was there. The day you and the Rangers saved the Earth.
To the 10th Power is the first of the annual Ranger team-ups. Some seasons, for one reason or another, didn't have team-ups, but even if the episodes weren't very good, it was always cool to see them join up. The two head to the megaship, Andros reuniting with Alpha. They locate the Rangers, and Andros goes into the Power Vault, where he and the other Rangers kept their morphers. The two lead the Psychos outside while Mike sneaks in and frees the other Rangers. Meanwhile, back in the megaship, the Power Vault reopens and the other morphers are taken. The Galaxy Rangers are cornered by the Psychos until the arrival of some old friends.
Oh, yes, it can. Ready?
Let's rock it!
In space.
We thought you could use a little help.
All right. You guys ready to join the party?
Go! Galactic!
This is just awesome. And we also get the other staple of the annual team-up, the explosions behind them after they morph. Yes, it's silly and cheesy, but like the Sparks thing, my theory is so much power concentrated in one spot causes an overload. Plus, hey, it's Power Rangers, it's supposed to be cheesy. Anyway, the fights here are just great, showcasing a number of different fighting techniques, from sword fighting to wrestling moves to just the use of their weapons. The stunt work is fantastic, and the Rangers all really come off as competent fighters, especially when you consider that they're managing to fight off the Psychos so well. It really shows that despite how strong the Psychos were last season, and even with their enhancements, they're no match for two battle-hardened Ranger teams. I should also note why this is such a great team-up. Anytime there's a crossover in, say, comic books, there's a risk that one team or hero will overshadow the other, questioning the competence or effectiveness of the other. With this team up, the two groups complement each other well, working together really effectively, and the individual fights with the Psychos show how in sync the two teams are. Using the lights of Orion and the Space Rangers' weapons, they appear to destroy the Psychos. Turns out Alpha was the one to call the other Rangers in, and given what we see next episode, it's probable that they used the Nasada shuttle in order to reach Terra Venture, though it is kind of a big plot hole about how fast the thing needs to be to catch up with the colony. The Space Rangers decide to stick around and get a tour of Terra Venture, though they do say they need to head back to Earth eventually. However, amidst the remains of the Psychos and the rubble, Psycho Pink crawls out, Deviat taking her to heal her injuries. It's immediately followed up by The Power of Pink, wherein Psycho Pink rips off the control device on her arm, saying she only cares about destroying the Pink Ranger and not any of the others. She tries to kill Trakina, but Villamax saves her with one quick move of his sword. She runs off, Trakina deciding to let her go and deal with the Pink Ranger. Psycho Pink, using the same kind of possession ability that we saw with Psycho Yellow last season, travels along Terra Venture's network until she ends up in Kendrix's computer. Kendricks has used the Galaxy Book to locate an ancient sword weapon before Psycho Pink reaches out of the computer and drains some of Kendricks' mind like last season. Kendricks and Cassie chase after her as she leaves TerraVenture, heading for the planet where the sword is located. They contact the other Rangers, but a group of Stingwingers come in to distract them. Psycho Pink finds the sword embedded in stone like the Quasar Sabers and is able to pull it out, fighting the two Pink Rangers. The sword grows larger with every blow. So I guess we have an explanation for why Cloud's sword in Final Fantasy VII is so friggin' huge. Cassie is forced to power down and her morpher gets separated from her. Psycho Pink smashes Cassie's morpher, draining the energy from it and causing an energy cyclone. Psycho Pink mutates to her monster form as she gains more energy, the cloud growing tall enough to affect TerraVenture. Cassie is weakened thanks to her damaged morpher, and Psycho Pink grows giant-sized, the Galaxy Megazord arriving to stop her. The Space Rangers take the Astro Megaship and form the Astro Megazord to help. As I said, I think the Space Rangers took the shuttle to get to TerraVenture, which would explain why the Galaxy Rangers never tried to form the Astro Megazord before. Without the shuttle, the thing doesn't work. It's not exactly a long knockout brawl, but it's nice to see the two Megazords working together in American footage. They defeat Psycho Pink, but the cyclone is still going. With Cassie continually in pain, Kendricks takes out her Quasar Saber and goes into the energy cyclone, despite it continually harming and blasting her. Kendricks finally reaches the morpher in the eye of the cyclone. You know, I'm tired of this false drama, everyone telling her to get out of there and all that. We all know what's gonna happen. She's gonna destroy the sword and we'll see her fine just a minute later. They'll talk about friendship and then...
Kendricks!
I'm okay. I'll always be here.
So, yeah. Kendricks is dead. Didn't call that one. Cassie's morpher repairs itself and the two groups say farewell, Kendricks' Quasar Saber flying off to parts unknown. Yeah, that's a pretty sad way to end the team up. Still, the two teams leave on good terms. Valerie Vernon, who played Kendricks, was sadly diagnosed with leukemia and had to leave the series to undergo treatment. Fortunately, the treatments were successful and she's now leukemia-free. The plan was for Patricia Lee, who played Cassie, to become the new Pink Galaxy Ranger, but conflicts with the producer caused her to leave. Supposedly she was being paid considerably less than the other Galaxy Rangers. From what we know, it's a shame too, since at least one full episode reported to be truly excellent was completed before she left. Instead, another in-space alumni was chosen to be the new Pink Galaxy Ranger. The Quasar Saber lands on another alien planet. Kendricks, in a dream, tells Maya where her Quasar Saber is and instructs her to protect it. Maya's been having dream visions during the entire season, but I'll get into that a bit more when I analyze the characters for the season. Deviat leads the Rangers on a wild goose chase for the Saber, while he goes after the real location of the Saber. The same Wild West bar as before. Weird. At an auction for weapons, various monsters bid for it, until one person in particular announces her presence.
1 million!
Astronomer. It is an honor to have you here. You bid 1 million Xanabatars for the Quasar Saber?
Better yet, I get the Quasar Saber and all of you keep your lives.
However, Trakina is also at the bar and reveals the fact that Astronema is really Corone. Corone fights her way out of the bar and gets away, showing that she's obviously been training a bit in the intervening time since in space. Corone travels to the other Rangers and they make their way to the jet jammers, but Drakina intercepts them. Corone takes the saber and fights Drakina, getting knocked off a cliff. She saves herself, but only has a tenuous grip on the rock face. However, as she drops, Kendrix's spirit appears to Corone, gives her the pink transmorpher, and brings her back up. She retrieves the saber and morphs. So, Corone is a Power Ranger now.
I wouldn't want to be a Power Ranger anyway.
In the next episode, we see a little bit more follow-up on Corone's time as Astronema, with her lamenting her lost childhood. After a fight where Leo's Ranger powers are drained and his morpher damaged, she talks about a time as Astronema when she fought a warrior with 2 keys that, when combined, granted him awesome power. She froze him in stone before he could finish combining them, and his powers might be enough to replenish Leo. The two arrive at the cave of the warrior, where we see this.
Astronema! You struck down the warrior and dare to return!
Holy crap, Army of Darkness! Anyway, in order to pass through, Corone has to face herself as Astronema. Heh, told her she should have kept her staff. When she offers to sacrifice herself to save Leo, she's allowed to enter. Seriously, talking and moving skeletons and Power Rangers is just creepy. Anyway, they go into the cave, but the warrior doesn't have the keys anymore. Corone apologizes for what she did as Astronema, and her tears hit it, freeing him of the stone curse. Is this just a trait of KO-35's people? Their tears have magical healing properties? Is it like the telekinesis? What the hell? The warrior gives them the keys, not just restoring Leo's powers, but granting him his Battleizer mode, too. Like the last one, his Battleizer mode looks absolutely silly. I think the thing that just makes me laugh is the boots. The rest of it I wouldn't have that much of a problem with as just a toy marketing to buy and whatnot, but the little armored feet serve absolutely no purpose. I should note that technically it isn't called a Battleizer in the series itself, but it's technically dubbed Battleizer armor due to its use in the franchise. I suppose those of you at home are wondering why the hell this show is called Lost Galaxy. Well, it seems the creators were frequently tossing around ideas for the concept of the show, one of which was the idea of ancient Rangers, but for various reasons the idea was scrapped, so the only real explanation from the producers for why the Quasar Sabers are in the rock is Zordon put them there, which appeared in one of the earliest versions of the script. However, there was still a plan to also bring in the Phantom Ranger for a bit that never materialized, as well as put them into a Lost Galaxy to really push the team to their limits. As such, the ending story arc begins with Enter the Lost Galaxy. One night, while the scientists are studying the Galaxy book, they recite certain words in it that causes the book to suddenly short-circuit the colony's systems. At the same time, a mysterious man lands on Terra Venture and heads straight for the Galaxy book, which has been locked up after the aforementioned short-circuiting. Security stops him before he can get to the book. The man tells Kai that he's the guardian of the book and that it was stolen centuries ago and that they need to get the book away before it does any damage. Kai, convinced of the man's sincerity, decides to help him. I'll get into this a bit more when we analyze Kai's character arc at the end. Deviat intercepts Kai before he can get the book to the Guardian. The Guardian, weakened by the atmosphere, is killed by Deviat. Deviat reads from the book, finishing the incantation and giving himself more power. Deviat grows and it takes all 3 Zords to defeat him. The mystic energies of the book transport Terra Venture into the Lost Galaxy. The Lost Galaxy screws with Terra Venture immensely, causing time anomalies, and the crew can't navigate with no known stars to move by. A space pirate ship led by the monster pirate Captain Mutiny detects Terra Venture and heads toward them.
Sir, there's a vessel approaching.
What kind of vessel?
Well, it's a castle sitting on a dinosaur flying towards us.
Say what you will about Captain Mutiny, he knows how to travel. Captain Mutiny comes aboard with his Pirates of Penzance rejects and explains that every 100 years or so a vessel ends up in the Lost Galaxy, but that he has a machine that can send them back. Naturally, the Rangers don't trust it, but Stanton decides to send a ship to Mutiny's planet to check it out anyway. While the Terra Venture soldiers head back to the colony, the Rangers stay to check on Captain Mutiny and get more information. They discover that Mutiny captures ship crews to be his mining slaves, and that whatever's in the box is meant to capture Terra Venture's crew. They fight a monster and defeat it before heading back to Terra Venture, but Deviat suddenly shows up and drains what remains of the monster's power, returning to normal. The box, in turn, actually contains a monster that burrows into the ship. Deviat comes to Captain Mutiny and starts working for him, helping to enhance the monster's power. After a particularly tough battle, the Rangers managed to combine the strength of their Zords and defeat the monster in the ship. After a clip show episode, there are 2 filler episodes involving a monster named Hexuba that are barely worth mentioning. However, the important part is that at the end of the second part, Commander Stanton reveals that their fuel reserves have been tainted and that they only have 1 or 2 days left before they run out of fuel and the ship is without power. We see this affecting them in the next episode as one of the engines blows out. In Escape the Lost Galaxy, Mike gets into the slave camp to try to free the rest of the people while Kai locates the spell that brought Terraventure to the Lost Galaxy. They open a portal and Terraventure sets course for it while Mike frees the slaves, the Rangers arriving in the megaship to help get everyone out. Mutiny chases after the megaship as Mike sacrifices the Torozord to keep the portal open long enough for Terraventure to return home. Mutiny's castle passes through the portal as well, intent on conquering this new galaxy, but...
What?
There's only one ruler in this universe, and that's me.
Leo finds Mike, who's floating in the vacuum of space. Unmorphed. And yet he's still alive. Power Rangers takes science and beats it with an aluminum bat. Still, he makes it, but the Magna Defender morpher is trashed. The Lost Galaxy saga really just came off like wasted potential. It got off to a great start, introducing the team to a dangerous new situation, but petered out pretty quickly into filler. Captain Mutiny wasn't nearly as interesting as the villains we had already had, though at least he came off as a pirate. Still, the problem when you go from powerful evil monarch to pirate is a loss of scope, as we saw with Divatox, so it was good that he didn't stick around after they returned to the regular galaxy. Due to a lot of the production and rewrite issues, they were never able to explore the backstory of the galaxy powers and what had happened 3,000 years prior that had caused the Quasar Sabers to be embedded in the rocks to begin with. But, like I said, they weren't exactly planning on doing much with it anyway. Isn't it fun when the title of your series is a lie? The series comes to a close in the 3-parter Journey's End. Deviat returns to the Scorpion Stinger, claiming to have been kidnapped by Captain Mutiny and forced to work with him, but Trakina doesn't buy it and orders Villamax to destroy him. Deviat flees down to the cocoon, planning to enter it and rejuvenate himself. However, Trakina and Villamax intervene. Deviat grabs Trakina and leaps into the cocoon, the two merging together inside of it. Trakina leaves the cocoon with a distortion in her voice like Deviat and small modifications to her appearance like darker eyes. Terraventure's in bad shape, with only 1 engine left, and they decide they need to land somewhere. They've located a nearby world and prepare to land Terraventure. There are some good moments here, like the dome's shield coming down and we see the actual sky, as well as the sun coming up over the new world. Maya even says how sad she is that Kendrix isn't there to see it. However, the Scorpion Stinger arrives and Trakina launches a direct attack.
Welcome back, Terraventure.
Leo and Damon swipe some explosives as the Scorpion Stinger destroys the last of the colony's engines. As Damon distracts the Scorpion Stinger, Leo plants the explosives on the ship, forcing the villains to withdraw for the moment. However, the loss of the engine means that the colony can't navigate and it crashes into one of the planet's moons instead. To make matters worse, the colony's dome starts to crack. What's left of the colony has to evacuate if they have any hope of survival. Trakina attaches bombs to every single one of the Stingwingers, much to Villamax's dismay.
Trakina, please. We can destroy the Rangers without destroying our own soldiers.
State it. I've got a date with destiny, and I won't be late.
The first part of the finale comes to a close with Trakina riding atop the Scorpion Stinger as her suicide bombers approach the colony. The Stratoforce and Centaurus Zords are sent out to try to deal with the Stingwingers, but plenty of Stingwingers get inside. We even get glimpses of Bulk and Phenomenus fleeing, the first time we've seen them in like 25 episodes. Villamax is still pissed at the idea of destroying their whole army, then spots a little girl in the wreckage. He protects her from the falling rubble.
Thanks, I knew you'd help me.
Cindy, no!
You are welcome.
Cindy, Cindy.
The Zords are finally overrun and the Stingwingers detonate, blowing up the two. The Rangers, thanks to their extensive arsenal and some tricks, are able to fend off the remaining Stingwingers and help with the evacuation. Commander Stanton observes the situation and manages to get in some Star Trek-esque pathos.
The city was going to be the shining capital of the new world. Instead, it's a shipwreck.
We also get some last bits of character development for Leo.
Still glad you snuck on board? I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
As the last group of shuttles head towards the planet, the Scorpion Stinger approaches, Trakina saying they'll blast them out one by one. Villamax, however, refuses to fire on the defenseless shuttles, and Trakina starts blasting him, laughing in glee. However, he also refuses to fight his students, so Trakina just wails on him.
You taught me to fight too well, it seems.
You've learned nothing.
Before Trakina can resume her assault on the shuttles, the Astro Megaship comes in, finally using its friggin' mega lasers. However, the Scorpion Stinger grabs the Megaship, which starts exploding. Leo says that their only way to stop Trakina is to initiate the Megaship's self-destruct. I've gotta say, this is a lot more heart-wrenching than losing Terra Venture. Sure, it was their home and all, but the Megaship helped save the entire universe, and they're losing Dekka now, too. Sure, Dekka wasn't exactly a main character or anything, but she still had a personality. They succeed, forcing the Scorpion Stinger to crash on the moon. Bulk and Phenomenus reach the New World. Back on the moon, Leo's jet jammer has crashed as well. Trakina, with her ship damaged and herself partially injured, goes to the cocoon to complete her metamorphosis, ending Part 2. Trakina, once the metamorphosis finishes, emerges as a humanoid insect. Leo, unable to contact the others, heads towards the Scorpion Stinger. As the humans start setting up a makeshift colony on the planet's surface, Trakina heads towards the wreckage of Terra Venture. Once there, she re-energizes the city, somehow lifting the city dome off and sending it straight for the humans.
Welcome back, Leo.
Trakina?
That's right, it's me. Only bigger and badder. I was just on my way to smash you and all the pathetic people on the planet with your dear Terra Venture.
Trakina's transformation has made her stronger and more agile, easily able to outfight Leo and sending him falling out of a skyscraper. He morphs and hits the ground, surviving the attack. But Trakina goes after him and the two begin their fight. The Rangers learn what's going on and head to the dome to try to stop her. The Rangers reunite and fight Trakina, but it goes about as well as you'd expect, the villainess tossing the five around like ragdolls. Leo summons his battleizer and grabs Trakina, pulling her in and firing at point-blank range. The Rangers arrive at the wreckage and he climbs out, his helmet damaged, but he gives the thumbs up. And I'm sure Trakina will never bother anyone again. The colony is still in danger, though, but thankfully the Galaxy Megazord appears and slows the city down enough for it to miss the people and crash a little more safely. The Galactabeasts lead the Rangers away and brings them, to their shock and amazement, to people frozen in stone. Yep, the world they've landed on is actually Miranoi, Maya's homeworld, and where their journey as Rangers began. Well hey, now with Corone here, she can cry on everybody and return them to normal!
Our quest is complete. Maybe someday the next chosen warriors will free you. Until then...
With the Saber's return to the Rock, the mystic energies of the Saber restore the people of Miranoi. However, even more surprisingly, Kendricks returns to life. How? Why? Oh, who the hell cares?
I knew you'd make it here. Kendricks! You don't know how many times I wished you'd come back. I missed you.
I can't believe it.
This is incredible.
Hey, thanks for everything you've done. I wouldn't have missed it for the world.
Hey, look! Looks like they're celebrating too.
Like the last season, Lost Galaxy is a space opera. This one's different, of course, since it was able to tell its own story instead of serving as the potential end to all of Power Rangers. The space bits could have used a lot more backstory, though. I really wish we had learned what exactly had happened 3,000 years ago and who was it who wielded the original galaxy powers. And of course, the Lost Galaxy that the entire series was supposed to be about ended up being just like regular space, but with more pirates. One of the advantages of the season being standalone is that the writers were allowed to give the characters a bit more personality, development, and change than what we had got in previous seasons. In this case, I have thoughts about all of these Rangers, and since Bulk and Skull are no longer a part of the series, seriously, Bulk and Phenomenus were only in like 3 or 4 episodes out of 45, so why did they even bother? We'll instead use their time to talk about the Rangers' development. The one who got the most was Leo. As I said earlier, when he began, he was rash, impulsive, and didn't take the time to think about the situation or the consequences of his actions. By the end, he was less prone to leaping in without regard. Still, despite his previous behavior, he's still glad of most of the choices he's made and where they made him end up. Mike, when he started, was very protective of his brother and judgmental of the fact that he followed them on board, but after he joined with the Magnet Offender, he seemed to really change, accepting of Leo's actions and even preferring to bring him on official missions, like in the rescue mission. He came off as more of a goody-good than the others on the team, though it was consistent since he freely walked into the portal to help Maya's people. However, the goody-good nature made for some well-written bits, like in the rescue mission, where the head honchos at Terra Venture say that it's too big a risk to launch a rescue mission for a distress call.
Our mission doesn't spell out that we have to rescue others in times of trouble.
Exactly.
But that's because it doesn't need to be spelled out. Helping should be second nature. As you said, it's dangerous out there, and the day may come that we have to send a distress signal of our own.
Kai began as a by-the-books officer through and through. The only times his behavior seemed to stray from what regulations told him was when Commander Stanton gave him advice. For example, when Stanton said to not leave anyone behind, that's when he decided to steal the megaship and rescue the others. In an episode called Blue to the Test, Stanton advised him to trust his instincts more often than the regulations. In that episode, it helped him save the ship, but we also saw that thought process in action when he stole the Galaxy book and freed the book's guardian. Kendricks didn't undergo a significant change, though her personality shined through most of the time. She was the scientist in the brain, but instead of that causing her to be nerdy and socially awkward like Billy had been, she was instead outgoing, trusting, and optimistic. She seems especially drawn to Leo, strangely protective of him after she realizes he's a stowaway. It really shows off a selflessness in her character, that she didn't care about the consequences for herself, which helps explain why she made the sacrifice she did to try to save Cassie. Damon's a hard nut to crack. He clearly has a courageous spirit to the point where during Facing the Past, he actually tackled a monster while unmorphed to give the others time to escape. However, he really came off kind of as a jerk sometimes, not caring about other people's problems and instead worrying about getting something for himself. Still, his mechanical knowledge was invaluable, and like I said, he's still pretty noble. Maya's character was often bizarre to watch. She doesn't really undergo any change in her personality, but it's her personality itself that's baffling. Her entire world is encased in stone. Everyone she knew and loved is as good as dead, and she's been whisked off in a spaceship to a place of unfamiliar technology and social customs, and she couldn't be happier. In fact, Miranoi rarely ever comes up in her conversation, and it never seems like she's sad for all the people trapped in stone or concerned for their well-being. She really came off as wasted potential a lot of the time. Sure, she was considerably helpful to the team by being able to communicate with the Galactabeasts and was in tune with nature and all that junk, but she could have also partially filled the mentor role, educating the rest of the group about the Quasar Sabers, the various powers and ancient forces they encountered. But instead, she just has dreams where animals or energy sources or dead people talk to her and give her instructions. Still, like the others, she's heroic, and I suppose being happy-go-lucky has its upsides. I'm just saying it comes off as being in denial about her life. As the series progressed, there seemed to be a real sense of chivalry about the series. The amount of swordplay was one thing, but the theme of loyalty, especially among the forces of evil, seemed to be a major factor. Individual monsters and generals expressed fealty towards their leader far more so than in previous series, with the exception of Ecliptor, though his loyalty was more about fatherly love. Most of the villains seemed more dedicated to a wider range of emotions and priorities than just straight-up evil. Kind of a microcosm of that is the episode Loyax's Last Battle. As an old evil warrior named Loyax wants one final honorable battle before he dies. Eventually, he faces off against Maya alone, wanting desperately to fight her. He reveals that he used to be good, but as the fight against evil wore on, it was clear to him that evil would eventually triumph and he switched sides. Loyax is an old knight, still honorable in his heart, but unable to change in a universe that has outgrown him. He's sexist towards Maya at first for being a girl, but still wants to fight her personally since she's a Power Ranger. It comes off less as overt misogyny, but instead set in older ways of thinking. While the episode is more obviously just a filler about how we can still change, it's also a nifty, if fast-paced character piece about an old warrior wanting one last chance for glory. The final shot of the episode is beautifully rendered, with Maya sticking Loyax's sword in the sand and the team walking off into the sunset, the sword resembling a grave for the fallen warrior. However, that was simply a monster who used to be good. Consider also Trecheron, who, despite his name being, treachery, was actually completely loyal to Scorpius and swore revenge on Trakina for betraying him. His monsters were fiercely loyal to him, and he never came off as cruel or unkind to his minions. He seemed to behave more like a samurai, wanting to prove himself as a warrior to Scorpius, and even challenged the Red Ranger in the middle of a larger battle to single combat. Villamax was an even better example of the chivalry present. Sure, he was still a dark warrior, but he remained true to his promises when he made them, and was the one who recommended Loyax to Trakina, wanting to give an honorable warrior his due. He was a lot closer to Ecliptor in his ways. He was evil, but he had standards. It makes me all the more curious about his backstory and how he developed into the way he is. As a Dark Knight, Kegler was his faithful squire, and he still protected the innocent. His quarrel was with the Rangers and anyone who aided them, not in those defenseless innocents on the shuttle or the like. However, he's still loyal to Trakina despite all the terrible things she's done, as a knight is to his queen, refusing to raise his weapon against her. His final words are an expression of disappointment as much as anger in what Trakina has become despite all that he tried to do. The Stingwingers were boring foot soldiers. They have no real defining characteristics, nor were they ever particularly impressive against the Rangers. As pathetic as the Piranatrons were, you at least were shown that in large numbers they could overwhelm the Rangers, whereas the Stingwingers were as generic as they came. The only time they were truly dangerous was when you strapped bombs to them, and even then the Rangers survived more than one explosion that they caused. All in all, Power Rangers Lost Galaxy was a pretty good follow-up to In Space. While it lacked the familiar cast and the epic musical score, the story itself was solid, though very slow to start out, which is why I think a lot of people left the series. When the series began, the ratings were the highest Power Rangers had ever seen, but the ratings did start to drop as the show went on, and it took longer for them to get to the good bits, like the Magna Defender, though they stretched the search for the Lights of Orion a bit too long, in my humble opinion. However, after 2 heavy space operas, it was time to return the show to its roots a bit and see the Rangers fighting off evil forces on Earth again. That's why next time, the signal is calling for Lightspeed Rescue.
It was an honor fighting with you guys. No, Leo. The honor was all ours.